In the dark shadows and in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast, we are the brave and bold.
Can I get you to channel 5? 320 standby 1. And hearing for a 2nd precinct squad or any beat squad that's in the area. The U of M PD is asking for assistance from Metro Transit and Minneapolis for a group of 8 to 10 males at the East Bank Light Rail Station chasing people around with hammers. They do have some people injured. They're still getting us more information, but they're requesting assistance.
Roger 10, clear OTO, we'll start to that.
Copy.
221 went over there as well.
Copy. 1821 to route 2.
223 also, center.
Copy.
700 block central.
2149.
A group of 8 to 10 Somali teens attacked travelers at the East Bank Light Rail Station in Minneapolis on Friday night, and there were several injuries reported. This station stop is located next to the University of Minnesota campus. The incident was apparently reported to 911 just before 10 p.m. on Friday, according to the audio. Another social media police scanner reports a 9:48 Facebook post on 2nd Precinct Minneapolis Crime Watch page said that the University of Minnesota U of M police were requesting assistance from Minneapolis police and Metro Transit police for a group of 8 to 10 males chasing people with hammers. And that some people were injured. A Facebook post a minute later on Minneapolis scanner page said that the 3 police departments were responding to multiple 911 calls. About 10 to 12 Somali teen males armed with hammers chasing people, also with several injuries reported. Both Facebook pages regularly post summaries of police scanner audio. A person who claimed on social media to have been at the station when the incident occurred said that the group of males had hammers and bars, and they seemed to be attacking anyone who looked like they had money or were white. The witness, who said he isn't white but said that he didn't want to take on a bunch of dudes with blunt objects, said that he hurried an older white lady away, and they walked a few blocks to catch a bus. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about this incident is how little media attention it received. The second most remarkable thing is that none of the article titles about the story indicate that these teenagers were Somali. The story was tagged by Insta pundits Glenn Reynolds late last night, and it received enormous reader interest. Well, I would say. He has captioned the post, quote, "Minnesota nice," unquote. This is it's like a catchphrase for Minnesota. Like, I don't think it's like the official state motto, but people say, that's what people say, is it's Minnesota nice. Reynolds takes notes of the teens' nationality, and he writes, males, they were Somali teens showing their gratitude to the nation that gave them refuge. This is from an article entitled 8 to 10 Somali Teens Armed with Hammers Attack Bystanders at East Bank Rail Station in Minnesota. Media oddly quiet. I found it posted on redstate. It was from yesterday, May 21st, by Elizabeth Vaughn.
The Abracast. Occult. History. Conspiracy. And violence.
All right, everybody, Welcome to the Abercast. I am Dr. John Towers. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Last month, in the shadows of the Notre Dame Cathedral fire, I dropped an impromptu episode sounding the alarm. Always sounding the alarm about Islam here. You can hit up the feature topic links for the hours and hours of alarms about Islam that I've put out. The episode was specifically about the jihad of migration. Anyways, I got some questions and comments about the show. So I kind of wanted to revisit it while the iron was still hot, so to speak, in this story that we're going to be one of the stories we're going to be talking about tonight is a hot iron. And it's hot because it just happened, and it focuses on two things we talk about unrelentingly here. Unflinchingly, I would say. And that is Islam, and it is also the media. And it's weird, as we're going to see, like the media is a labyrinthian, mysterious labyrinthian gauze around the topic of Islam. And we're going to explore a little bit about that this evening. Look, I lost track already. Okay, so yeah, that episode in April called the Notre Dame Cathedral and the Hijra. I got some questions and I got some comments from you guys. So that was very interesting. You know, speaking of that, this week has been a very interesting week interacting with people who listen to the show. I'm not going to get into it, but it's been a very interesting week, and it's only Wednesday. So anyhow, I wanted to revisit this holy mission of migration, the Hijra, but we're going to look at it at a different way, from a different way this evening. We're going to be talking about this clash of cultures, but not too much in far off lands, France and Germany. We are going to get into some Germany stuff though. Well, we're going to be looking instead here at the good old USA. In that Hijra episode, we spent a little time talking specifically about the sticky situation that Minnesota has gotten itself into by opening their arms to the religion of peace. So we're going to grab on that thread and we're going to unravel this sucker. And so this is, it's illustrative, right? Because we are actually seeing unfold before our eyes how Hijra works, how it's designed to work. With the election of the first Muslim congressman in, I think, 2007, Keith Ellison, and with the recent elections of Ilhan Omar, both of whom are from Minnesota. There is another one from Michigan, that Rashida Tlaib. But yeah, we're going to see exactly how Hijra, this jihad of immigration, works. You know, they're flooding the zone and then they're electing their officials. So, you know, right now we are relatively new at this experience, but look at London. The fucking city of London's mayor is a Muslim. Is that, Shaikh Khan. So, you know, I'll just leave that there. You can make of that what you will. But we are going to be talking specifically about this. And if you can't tell already, this is going to be one of those episodes that's more sensitive of us out there might want to skip. You know, the reason I do these types of shows in the middle of the week is because I feel like I have fulfilled my obligation to put out an occult history or conspiracy podcast by the one that drops on Sundays. So I feel like we can get, you know, a little bit faster and looser with these rules. But I still believe it falls in that thing. It is a conspiracy. We're going to see the way the media is malpracticing this topic. It is a conspiracy. But anyhow, I digress. I'm getting ahead of myself. If you like I said, if you guys are easily religiously or, I don't know, racially sensitive, you might just want to back up a little bit. Not mad at you. I totally understand. I wouldn't want to sit through something that's going to trigger me. You know what I mean? So, without further ado, though, we're just going to get going. I do have a lot of stuff to get through. So we are going to just get rolling. Okay, so this is an article from January of 2018. I found it in the Twin City Pioneer Press. Minnesota has the most refugees per capita in the U.S. Will that continue? I think I might have got that date wrong. Anyhow, Minnesota has the highest number of refugees per capita nationwide, according to the U.S. Census and refugee support agencies, with the 2% of the nation's population. Minnesota has 13% of its refugees. Skipping ahead a little bit, Minnesota accepted 4,523 refugees in the 2-year period ending September 30th, 2015. According to the Federal Office of Refugee Settlement. But at that same time, the second wave arrived, 3,864 refugees who moved in from other states to Minnesota. The idea is once they are let in, nobody's keeping track. No one's really keeping track of them, except I guess the feds try to keep track of it through the census. Well, that's weird. Why are they all amassing in Minnesota, you might ask? Well, hold on. Minnesota's secondary migration was larger than all other states combined. Second place, Iowa had 442 refugees moving from other states. So, in other words, as soon as they have the choice on where to live, many refugees choose Minnesota. Michigan's also a big one, as we're going to briefly talk about. Minnesota has been a magnet, said Bob O'Hareg, who's the director of Arrive Ministries in Richfield, an agency that handles refugees. He said Montana has what refugees want: jobs, good social welfare programs, and plenty of people from their home country. As we're going to talk as we go through this, we're going to talk about the unwillingness of these refugees to integrate and how that's causing a problem. So I kind of blew past this part, but even though it is Wednesday, now is the time, if you're playing at home, to summon your vessel of the art. Mix up your weapon of mass distraction, whatever that is. Could be a bowl of Fruit Loops for all I know. Here's to you guys. Thank you for listening. I guess that was as good a place as any to do the invitation. You know what I mean? We just set the stage. Now let's get into the chaos. Muslim refugees threaten Minnesota community with rape. Local media ignore incident or leave out vital details. This was published in 2016. I found it on WND. A mob of up to 30 young Somali men paraded through one of Minneapolis's more upscale neighborhoods last week, yelling disparaging comments and threats against homeowners.
On any given day,
police are investigating a series of alleged terroristic threats made against people living in one neighborhood near Lake Calhoun. And Brett Hofflin is live in the newsroom now to explain what's going on. Brett?
Well, Leah, I talked to a few neighbors who told me throughout the week multiple young men have been harassing them. One woman even saying they threatened to kidnap and rape her.
A female resident of the neighborhood, obviously shaking the TV interview, relates how she was screamed at by a Somali man who threatened to kidnap and rape her.
On any given day, you can see hundreds of people around Lake Calhoun. But after just moving to the neighborhood, this woman is keeping her identity hidden to protect herself from what happened on Monday.
We couldn't get him out. We didn't know what to do.
According to this Minneapolis police report, between 20 and 30 young men showed up in front of her house around 9:30 in the morning, and the comments turned to threats.
They were screaming at their house that they were going to kidnap me and were going to rape you. It was just a very traumatizing experience.
Somalis living in Minneapolis are almost all Sunni Muslims. And residents of the Lake Calhoun area say this isn't the first time a group of Somali men has made an intimidating march through their neighborhood, which is filled with million-dollar homes. No hate crime charges are apparently being considered by either the Minnesota authorities or the Obama Justice Department, headed by Loretta Lynch. Okay, so you know how at the very beginning, oh no, a different article. So this isn't a surprise. Imagine if 20 or 30 white dudes were in a Somali neighborhood yelling at a lady threatening to kidnap and rape her. First of all, we wouldn't hear about anything else on any other news channel in the history of the world for, I don't know, months. And also, the hate crime decision would be smacked on that immediately. So this is a different part of the conspiracy. This isn't about the media. This is about Loretta Lynch and the Department of Justice. I like to do the shoes on the other foot situation. So, I mean, what do you think? That's what I think. Police were called to the scene on June 28th at 9:30 a.m. and are investigating the incident as a potential case of terroristic threats. No, terroristic threats is not what you think. Like, I don't believe, if you call in, like, a bomb, I guess that's a terroristic threat. But I've seen firsthand an incident that's something like a bar fight. And in the events leading up to the bar fight, if the one guy says, "I'm gonna fucking kill you," later when the cops are intervened and they're trying to figure out why people are being arrested, they'll slap a terroristic threat charge onto the person that's like, "Motherfucker, I'm gonna kill you." I've seen it done a lot. So when you hear, they're like, "Oh, well, at least they're getting labeled as terrorists." That's not necessarily true. If any cops or lawyers are out there and want to correct me if I'm wrong, I welcome that. No arrests have been made, and the Minneapolis media appear to be largely uninterested in reporting on the mob threats. According to Minneapolis, I'm sorry, I have like a thing in my... According to the Minneapolis police report, between 20 and 30 young Somali men showed up in front of the woman's house at 9:30 in the morning and started shouting insults, and the comments turned to threats. Nearly all Somalis living in Minnesota are either refugees or children of refugees, and they form a burgeoning Muslim enclave created by the U.S. government's long-term refugee policy. The U.S. State Department, working with the United Nations, has permanently resettled more than 132,000 Somali, quote, refugees, unquote, into dozens of American cities since 1983. According to federal data collected by the State Department. Over the last decade, the feds have resettled an average of 7,000 Somali refugees per year into the U.S., with Minneapolis, St. Paul receiving the largest number, followed by Columbus, Ohio, San Diego, Seattle, Atlanta, Maine, Texas, North Dakota, Tennessee, and even Alaska have also received dozens, if not hundreds, of Somali refugees. I was about to say salami refugees, and that's not right at all. I have to protect my journalistic and editorial credibility. Salami refugees. The most shocking part of this incident, we're going to hear this over and over again, may be the Minneapolis's media coverage of the incident or lack thereof. Check of the Star Tribune website, Minneapolis's largest newspaper, did not turn up one single story about the June 28th terror-threatening run through the Lake Calhoun neighborhood. Channel 5, an ABC affiliate in Minneapolis, never mentions that those making the alleged terroristic threats were Somalis. The station's videos reported by Brett Huffland, however, which that's the gentleman, the anchor that we were just talking to, however, zooms in on a police report highlighting the suspects were approximately 20 to 30 Somali males who kept making, quote, comments that turned into, quote, threats. Multiple young men have been harassing them, Huffland reports. We couldn't get them out, a woman tells Huffland from behind the shadows, her voice digitally altered to protect her identity. We didn't know what to do. When the shouts of, quote, we are going to rape you rang out, quote, we are going to rape you, unquote, rang out. Quote, it was just very traumatizing experience, unquote, the woman said. The Somalis were driving onto the sidewalk and onto the homeowner's lawn, all while shooting off bottle rockets and screaming their threats, she said. So this bottle rocket thing, we're going to talk about this incident that happened in Germany in 2015, 2016. And when I'm reviewing video of this incident, bottle rockets were used. I think, maybe I'll talk about it later, but it's like, you know, they're running around shooting these bottle rockets at people and, you know, doing all their business and all this stuff. And I'm like, motherfucker, you shoot another bottle rocket at me and we're going to fucking see what happens. That would be the end of the conversation. It wouldn't be like, oh, can you please stop shooting bottle rockets at me? And then stop saying that you're going to rape me. Like, there's no questions to be asked. There's no request to be asked. However, bottle rockets are pretty, they're pretty safe. We used to bottle rocket fight in the woods at my friend's house. Where was I? What the fuck am I talking about? It's a scary thought, especially for those who have young children. Multiple neighbors took cell phone videos of the roaming gang of Somali men. It's not the first time they showed up, but on the 28th, the threats were much more personal, the female resident told KSTP. The Minneapolis Police Department told KSTP it has an open, active investigation, and the police were taking it very seriously. So this story goes on and on to talk about the amount of Somali men who has been radicalized in this community and left or tried to leave the country to join ISIS and so forth. But since that's not really what our episode is about, I'm cutting it, but I felt like it was worthy of note. Then we're getting into this section of this article called "The Governor Tells Critics of Multiculturalism to Find Another State." Yet Minnesota Governor Mark Dayton, can you guess what political party he's affiliated with, has let it be known that his commitment to the multicultural model, the same model followed by the European Union, which is now breaking apart, is unwavering. The last October, Dayton told those attending a town hall meeting in St. Cloud that those Minnesotans not comfortable with the arrival of Syrian refugees and the state's expanding Somali population should, quote, find a new state, unquote, because Minnesota's economy cannot expand based on white B+ native-born citizens. We don't have enough, unquote. So I have so much shit in this episode. I'm going to actually leave this off the table because I could do probably a whole thing on this. The millions and millions of taxpayer welfare dollars that are stolen from these people. I shouldn't say these people. I'm trying to stay on track. Okay, so we were just talking about this European model. Comparisons to Europe. So Powerline Scott Johnson posted a blog on the Lake Calhoun incident entitled Minnesota Men at Play, which he mused. This has become a familiar story out of Europe, but it's something new under the sun in Minneapolis. Although it is big news, I can't find any evidence of the story in the Star Tribune. Please let me know if I missed it. Another element that gives the story a European dimension. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack right there. I mean, there's a lot to be said right here. I'm actually forced to make a decision, like a fucking choose your own adventure book. All right. Hey, all right, we got some stuff to talk about. Subscribestar.com /Abercast. I'm over there now. It's my free speech alternative to Patreon. I don't want to have anyone telling me what I can't fucking say and what I can't fucking say. So I'm over at subscribestar.com /Abercast. There's a ton of exclusive episodes you can't find anywhere else there. And also I've been uploading select text versions of episodes up there. Like the text version for this episode is available over there. And there's just one tier right now. I'm thinking about adding another tier, but right now there's just one tier. It's $3. You're not going to miss it. And you get tons of stuff. You get graphic components, you get bonus audio, you get exclusive episodes, as well as the text versions of these shows. So I know I get going fast, and I know I take some crazy turns into some things, but if you want like a cohesive, coherent, non-rambling version of the show, that's the only way I can offer it to you. So it's not every episode, but there are some episodes that it's there. Abercast.com. Check out the social media links. I mentioned earlier in the show that I love interacting with you guys. I really do. I've actually got some pretty tight friendships from listeners, talking to you guys on the telephone, listen to the crazy theories and whatnot, and also be able to give a little bit of support when I can. I'm thinking about, I got a friend of mine now that listens to the show named Jesse. He's going through some medical stuff, and the VA is kind of fucking him over a little bit. So I'd like to, let Jesse know that I'm thinking about him, and I reach out to him probably like once or twice a week, just to check on him in his situation. Anyhow, I'm not going to get off into this whole. This is not Romper Room with the magic mirror, me talking about all my friends. But anyhow, social media links, you can find me, hook me up there. I love interacting with you guys. Also, there's a mailing list. So I did something fun with the mailing list today, actually. I've been working behind the scenes on creating my own tarot cards. And I have ace through 10 done on the wands and also on the cups. And so what I did is I put them in like a little gallery, and I sent links to that, and also links to the text versions of the four suits. I did 4 episodes on the suits of the minor arcana. So I also made those available. They're kind of like a textbook, I guess, if you throw them together. This thing in my throat is fucking killing me. Okay. Anyhow, if you sign in the mailing list, you get that. And also there's tons of stuff. I do worksheets and notes and, all kinds of stuff. We actually have an episode of about the Kabbalah coming up, I think next week. And so you can go and download like all my little diagrams of the tree of life and the different maps and the lightning bolt down through the different Sephiroths and all that stuff, and the three triads of Sephiroths. You can find graphic elements of all that stuff. And basically I just set my notebook on the scanner and I just fucking scanned it in and it made it available. I thought it was cool. While you're at abercast.com, check out some comic books and graphic novels. Also, there's a shop button there now for the Vessel of the Art. Check out the Facebook page. I'm toying around with the idea of doing a Facebook group. I'm not sure if all you weirdos are ready to fucking talk to each other, though, or if you're interested. I'm not sure. And I don't want to make it if no one's going to play along, because it'll fucking check my ego pretty hard. YouTube, check out the YouTube channel, and also don't forget about the Sermon of the Wolf. It's a 6-part deep dive into werewolfism and lycanthropy, and you can find it a lot of places. Lots of places. All right, that's enough of all this. Let's get back into what we're all here for. I think it has to do with, because I don't talk all day. I just sit there and do my work all day long. I might sing a little bit. So when I get to yelling and carrying on on this microphone, I think it messes with my throat. Anyhow, where I left off is I was trying to figure out what path should I go? Should I elaborate on this idea of the European dimension, or should we just talk about their media and the lack of coverage? So I need to kind of try to figure out how to divide by zero. Bless you, Ed. My cat sneezes. So, all right. So we're just going to do brief kind of thing. Here, hold on. See, it's medicinal. So I mentioned this episode in the Hijra. I mentioned this incident in the Hijra episode. This New Year's Eve mass sexual assault all across Germany, specifically in Cologne. These, I don't know what to call them, Muslims. These youthful protesters. That's how the media would report them if they had to report them. These guys ran wild across Germany on New Year's Eve, 2015 and 2016. And in the wreckage of that night, there were dozens of group, mass sexual assaults, rapes in Cologne, Hamburg, Dortmund, Dusseldorf. I've been there. It's a nice place. And Stuttgart. I've been there. And that's a nice place. Then there was this leaked document where the German police estimated there are actually 1,200 women sexually assaulted and like 2,000 dudes that were involved. So do the math. There's those bottle rockets I was telling you about.
We just got out of the station with my friends, and the whole place in front of the cathedral was just filled with people. And after some moments, we just realized it was just men.
Oh, this woman is a babe. I've spoken before. My appreciation of German chicks is this one right here is very attractive.
Around us, there were, a group of 20 or 30 men that just surrounded us. They were pushing and pulling at our clothes, and then just men got on the left side, on the right side. They would touch us everywhere they could, between the legs, at our breasts. But they really tried hard. They tried to open our clothes and so on.
Also da waren halt Beleidigungen.
They were all really tall, black hair, always black beard, so North African people, I think it could also be Syrians, so refugees, but I think for us, the Germans, they all look the same.
So imagine that happening in all of these cities that I mentioned. The crazy part about it is there's actually numbers of actual rapes and gang rapes that took place. These were just what this lady was talking about was just being basically gang molested. But I think the number was there was like a dozen actual rapes that night. And the news media was dark. They didn't report on it until the people took to the streets and started shaming them into covering it. It was like, no big deal. And no matter what, it wasn't those Muslims. I have another article here called Muslim Migration and Rape Statistics in Europe by Daniel Greenfield. This was last year. But I'm actually not going to get into this whole thing. But the article does bring up some questions and some points, like what makes Sweden so exceptionally dangerous for women? It's their blonde hair. London, with its great diversity, has the highest rape rate within the United Kingdom. Belgium has the third highest Muslim population and the third highest sexual violence rate. And the statistics suggest that the key factor is not necessary in a high Muslim population, but a high Muslim immigrant population. So you can find that article and dive as deep into it as you want. But those points I thought were important. They were important to talk about before we get back to Minnesota. So where was I? The one branch I could have went to was the Europe dimension, and then the European dimension. Vice versa. We got to back up. Go back into our own dimension. Okay. So, and the other one was about the media coverage and how the media does not cover these things. It's hilarious. How should I protect everybody involved with this story? I was once on a podcast with three very progressive, very intelligent, and very funny females. And they did like a letters section, like where they would get questions and they would answer the questions. And one of the questions they got was a guy, and he was like writing in broken English, and he was asking them if they fuck like the blonde girls, and none of them knew what the fuck this guy was talking about. There was more to it, and I'm not going to give up the name of the podcast or anything like that, but this incident which should have been earth shaking to the Western world. We're talking about 1,200 women that were basically simultaneously sexually assaulted by gangs of men. Should have shook the world. Instead, there was no mention of it. And these three super smart ladies were like, well, I don't know what the fuck this guy's talking about. The blonde girls in Europe is what they said. And I was like, oh, I kind of know what he's talking about. So when I went back and listened to that episode, they had like put hold music over my explanation of the whole thing. I was like, oh, I know what they're talking about. And it was like, for like 4 minutes or whatever it took for me to explain what this was referring to. And that's just a microcosm. I pointed out as just a microcosm of why part of the reason that there's this media conspiracy not to cover these things. So, all right. So about the media, let's take a second. Let's take the second road, and we're going to be talking about this. I found this paper that we're going to be talking about parts of it. I'm not getting into the whole thing. It's called the Islamization of Minnesota Media, 2018 by John Gilmore. I found this in the Center for Security Policy. My point was that they were feminists, third in some cases, third wave feminists. And even they had not heard of this. It's a problem with modern feminism as well. Minnesota media selective reporting. The problem, of course, is that there is no real assimilation or intermingling or integrating. Instead, there is a fierce insistence on the part of the newly arrived to demonstrate the newly arrived. This reminds me of, remember, what the fuck was it? Where the aliens came down and who the fuck was it? The guy who played Indigo Montoya was an alien, I think. Mandy Patinkin. Was that Mandy Patinkin? In Sonny from The Godfather was like this drunk, rough and tumble, loose cannon cop. What was Alien Nation? You know, they didn't call them aliens. They called them newcomers. And they drank like rotted milk to get drunk inside. This is like a 90s reference at best, maybe even an 80s reference. That's probably more right. Anyhow, the newly arrived to demonstrate through clothing, in this instance, the unacceptability of showing the female form in public, per the harsh strictness of Islam. But the local media applauds, and to voice a different perspective on the matter is to be labeled a bigot. By contrast, anything that reflects badly on the favored group or reported once, if not all, then never again. Somali involvement in the daycare fraud is one good example. Media's reluctance to cover how Somali immigrants took criminal advantage of the Minnesota daycare system is notable and would seem part of a pattern of such reluctance to report aggressively on immigrant, especially Muslim immigrant criminality. Iman Omar, who won her election as a Democrat in Minnesota, candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in the November 2018 election cycle, has been a darling of Minnesota media. An object of countless glowing stories, emphasizing nothing so much as her being a Muslim trailblazer and a refugee who won the lottery of life by being relocated to America. The far less appealing information about her is the alleged abuse of the immigration system to ensure entry for her brother by committing bigamy, and fraud gets short shrift by comparison. So what this says is that she married her fucking brother to get him across the thing, to get him across the border, get him into the States. I had not heard that to this point, and if I did, I probably would have just been like, oh, that's just some like Alex Jones stuff. So it's shocking to see it in such a paper of such, you know, standing and credibility, much like me and my doctorate. Previously a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Omar was considered a shoo-in to Congress to succeed Representative Keith Ellison, which we're going to talk about later. Keith Ellison, you might know, is the first Muslim to be elected to Congress. He was famously sworn in on Thomas Jefferson's Quran. And when he was, all the media coverage was like, look how erudite. He's being sworn in on Thomas Jefferson's Quran. And these people are so self-aware, they do not understand why Thomas Jefferson had a Quran. They were like, Thomas Jefferson was just so learned. He would accept any religion. The reason Thomas Jefferson had a Quran is because he leveled a war against Islamic pirates who were enslaving Americans. This is the Marine Corps hymn, from the hulls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. There was a reason the fucking Marines were on the shores of Tripoli, and it was to kill Muslims. Anyhow, you go to the feature topic link, and you could find, I think I did both Barbary Wars in one episode, and you could find it. You go back in the archives and find that shit. Those fiery, passionate episode that I did. Anyhow, he won his November 2018 election for Attorney General of the state, so he's now the Attorney General of Minnesota. Omar put together the monolithic Somali voting bloc, together with an assortment of white, leftist, liberal groups in order to win the Democratic primary. Minnesota's 5th congressional district skews so solidly to the left that whoever wins the primary is expected to win the general election. In one sense, Omar succeeding Ellison is simply swapping one Islamic supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood for another. Yet Omar's profile may be expected to continue being raised by Minnesota media once she takes her seat in Congress in 2019. She famously was the one that said, on 9/11, some people did something. One attention-getting issue likely to draw media focus is Omar's demand that she be allowed to wear her Islamic headgear on the floor of the House of Representatives. Before even being sworn in, Omar began making her demand specifically that the long-standing rule banning the wearing of head coverings on the U.S. House floor be overturned so she can appear in her hijab. That changed the 181-year-old rule is part of the package of rules introduced by Democrats to be voted on in January 2019. Obviously, they passed it. Additionally, Omar already has appeared on the cover of Time magazine, being a guest on several late-night television shows, and is active on the CARE fundraising circuit, both on behalf of herself as well as fellow Muslim candidates. Minnesota media consistently declined to report on these activities. Omar, however, allegedly has violated Minnesota House ethics rules by taking an honoraria from schools that she oversees in one of her legislative capacities. That sounds bad. I had no legislative overseeing of, we'll just say, the organization that issued me my doctorate. Alpha News was the news outlet that broke the story, and fellow House members brought the violations of the wider public. The evidence is strong that Omar intentionally timed the filing of her disclosure reports with state authorities in order to avoid being found out while the legislature was in session. She's somewhat infamous, of course, for alleging of committing immigration fraud by marrying her brother. Bam, there it is. This too is a subject of local media only reluctantly covered, giving her every benefit of the doubt and not asking probing questions. And the best explanation of her sham marriage came to Powerline Scott Johnson and Alpha News prayer Sam Sunder. The former has credited the latter with uncovering the strongest evidence that Omar married her brother by combing through various social media accounts. By those accounts were quickly deleted and made private when Sam Sauer's reporting became known. I mean, it's really, I know that we're talking about East African Somalia, but when you start looking at the level of interbreeding in Afghanistan among Islamists and stuff, it literally gets gross and crazy. Virtually none of their, I know they're not saying that she fucked her brother. She just had a sham marriage with him, but it just brought it up in my subconscious, or in my conscious, I should say. Virtually none of their reporting was picked up on by Minnesota media, which had well-practiced technique of dealing with stories unfavorable to Islam or Muslims. Such an issue would typically be addressed only briefly in a light most flattering to those involved, never to be revisited again except under the most dire of circumstances. In a similar vein, Omar says and other media outlets never picked up the media closest to her. For example, after President Trump's first State of the Union address in January 2018, she went on a far-left program, Democracy Now!, and proclaimed the speech to be fascist and outdated. It's hilarious for a Muslim to be talking about something being outdated. So the thing is like with Christianity and even Judaism, these things get reformed over time. The Great Reformation, Martin Luther, and all this. They get reformed, and in some branches of the religion, they get totally redone. Whenever anyone gets, like, you know, together and be like, look, we got to change this shit. This is it. Islam, however, never gets reformed. It never gets updated. So her out there bitching that some speech is outdated is laughable. Her unhappiness apparently relates to any change in the immigration system that would reward merit instead of, quote, family ties, like marrying your fucking brother. What is this, Pornhub all of a sudden? Before being groomed to be the friendly face of Minnesota Care, Omar tweeted that Israeli has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and see the evil doings of Israel. When this reporter brought this tweet to a wider audience, she declared that the tweet was a, quote, sad and hateful man that had been oppressed to being oppressed to Israel wasn't the same thing as anti-Semitism. Huh. Well then, I mean, what's Islamophobia then? She then went on to claim that Israel was an apartheid state, and those exchanges made the tablet, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, Haaretz, and the Jerusalem Post, as well as Robert Spencer's Jihad Watch. Minnesota media ignored the matter entirely. All right, I got to do one more. I'm never going to be able to get through this. I'm going to do this one more section, then we're going to wrap it up. All right. This section is called The Minnesota Media Blind Spot for Keith Ellison. Congressman Keith Ellison is perhaps Minnesota's best known Muslim. Meanwhile, this guy was raised as a Catholic, I think. I believe that he changed his religion to organize this voting bloc in 2007. He was ahead of the curve. But literally, that's what he I don't have any proof of that, but this is what he fucking did. And his rise to prominence was routinely supported by local media. Scott Johnson of Powerline has no equal in his detailed coverage of how media in the state looked the other way when negative information arose and helped clear the path for his errat success. The key feature of what otherwise might be considered a questionable association in his past was Keith Ellison's well-documented time in the Nation of Islam, founded by Louis. I rode on a UFO, Farrakhan. Now, I recently, I pay attention to this Leo Remini Scientology TV show that's on, I think it's on A&E. And she recently, towards the end of last season, she did a kind of an expose sort of thing on the relationship of Scientology and the Nation of Islam. And I feel like I'm in the know on these kind of things. Like, I feel like I got my finger on the pulse of a lot of this stuff, but this blew me away. And then I'm like, oh, that is why this crazy motherfucker is talking about UFOs, is because he's getting paid. It really was a giant piece of the puzzle for me. To summarize, back to the article, I'm sorry. Sorry to be off on UFOs. It's something we don't talk about UFOs very often on the show. Maybe not often enough. Maybe I should do a whole thing on UFOs. This is how my brain works. To summarize broadly, Johnson detailed time after time and instance after instance in which Minnesota media gave Ellison the benefit of the doubt and then some. For example, he noted the complete lack of media fact-checking on Ellison's claims about his years with the Nation of Islam. Claims easily disproven by by the public record. There's simply no escaping the conclusion that their behavior was willful, calculated to help Ellison to discredit his critics. It is not widely appreciated that Ellison had to win a hard-fought primary at 26, and his ultimate victory was far from assured when his past became more widely known. Enter his friend in the Minnesota media. His friends in the Minnesota media to help bury any Ellison's less than savory past associations. Again, as with Omar, winning the primary in Minnesota's 5th district is akin to winning the general election. There's another thing to be said about this guy is I believe he's in trouble. I believe the Me Too movement caught up with Keith Ellison. And I believe that there are stories. I'm not, like we just briefly covered, he gets a pass from the media, but there are accusations of him being brutal towards, I don't know, females. I'll just say that. The odium of the Nation of Islam has continued to cling to Ellison as well as to the present, despite photographic evidence to the contrary. Ellison has denied having any association with Farrakhan. Minnesotans have to turn to the national media outlets in order to learn the truth about their member of Congress. All right. So I feel like I'm long, so I do really have to wrap up. I'm sure that I'll pick this up again later. This is not a conversation or topic that's going to go away. So before I wrap up, let me just talk at you here for a second about subscribestar.com. We live in a world where these social media platforms and Googles and all this kind of stuff can just demote you or drown you with an algorithm or, limit the amount of stuff you can put out. So it's important for us to be searching out, places like minds.com and places like Subscribestar, where they're dedicated to free speech and not censorship. In March, I remember it was March 31st, because that's my birthday. I posted a bunch of I posted an episode about government-sponsored techno censorship and how the government paid into all of these platforms that are now censoring us. And we kind of discussed the ethics of that. If taxpayer money is going into these things to develop them or to keep them afloat, then under the First Amendment, what right do they have to actually do that? What right do they have to drown me with an algorithm? Or what right do they have to demote my posts? So places like minds.com, which, I'm still getting the hang of, and places like Subscribestar, which I'm, trying to build an audience. I got like one dude up there with me right now. And I'm like, thanks, bro. But we need to search out these alt things. Minds.com doesn't have an algorithm. Literally, it works like Facebook probably worked, in its beta stages or something, where they're not controlling, your posts or your audience or whatever. It's just you press the button and it actually posts to everyone that it's actually supposed to post to. Anyhow, so if you're on Minds, find me. I'm still trying to figure out the finer points of it. And if you're interested in supporting the show, I would just please think about, I know opening up a new account on a whole new fucking platform is shitty and it's boring and who wants to do it, but I try to make it worth your while. Like I said, I got 14 episodes. We're going to start doing an exclusive episode a month over there. And I try to give, the text versions of selected episodes are going to go over there. And then the, worksheets and the notes and all this other kind of stuff are going to be posted over there. I'm posting videos over there. So, if you want to support the show, that's a great way to do it. If not, hey, there's other ways to do it too. You can go to abercast.com. You can just give me a shout out. Go to the social media links at the bottom of the page there. Give me a shout out. Let me know what you think. You can sign into the mailing list. If you sign on the mailing list now, you get a link that goes to a secret part of my website that has a bunch of exclusive stuff. It's mostly graphic content, worksheets, notes, there's a few selected, text versions of stuff up there, specifically the, tarot card stuff. And you get to see a sneak peek of, the tarot cards that I have finished for my deck there. Feature topic link is at the website. While you're there, check out some comic books and graphic novels. And also there's a shop. I have a couple of these vessels of the art I'm trying to unload. The price that it's listed there it does include shipping and handling, but only in the States, dudes. Don't be in fucking Australia and ask me to send you this jar for $20 or whatever it is. Check out the Facebook page. Check out the YouTube channel, and remember to check out the Sermon of the Wolf, which is a 6-part deep dive into werewolfism and lycanthropy. I have been Dr. John Towers, and this has been the Abercast. I think I'm going to call this episode Minnesota, the Hammer. No, Minnesota, the Media, the Hammer, and the Hijra. That sounds good. What do you think? I mean, you'll already know what I did. You're listening to it.